he does seem to be very, ideologically tied to this concept of reducing the debt and not imposing this sort of enormous burden on future generations. And he's got the resources. I mean, what did he put into the Republican Party in the last cycle? Something like $280 million. So if he was to do something like that again and put it towards a third party, or even, like you say, go after some vulnerable moderate Republicans in those sort of House and Senate races, that could have a big impact.
So we will go to the United States, where Donald Trump has brought rebels in line to pass his flagship tax and spending legislation, his one big beautiful bill. The US president held phone calls with, I love saying that, rebel Republicans into the early hours of this morning to persuade them to back his plans. Now, the bill will deliver increased funding for border security, increase in military spending, and an expansion of tax cuts put in place during his first term. People say it's tax cuts for billionaires. Here's the US president speaking about the result.
They're going to be very proud tomorrow. So we're signing at about 5 o'clock, and at about 5 o'clock we're going to have B-2s and F-22s and F-35s flying right over the White House. And the Speaker and I and John Thune, we're all there together with most Republican senators and congressmen and women, and it's going to be a great day. So we'll be signing with those beautiful planes flying right over our head.
A beautiful bill with beautiful planes flying over our head, just in time for the 4th of July, as Trump wanted. Let's discuss it with Bevan Hurley, a senior US reporter for The Times and Sunday Times. Hello, Bevan.
Good evening,
Hi.
Henry.
Hi. How do you think he brought it home? Because there were some holdouts in Congress who were very concerned about the impact on poor people in their areas, in their constituencies. But in the end, all but two fell in line.
Yeah, that's right. We've seen this script before where Republican deficit hawks can play loudly and vociferously in the lead up to these types of big spending legislation pieces, only to then melt away, when push comes to shove. And the two Republican holdouts, we had Congressman Thomas Massey and Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, they have come under fire from Trump. He has used his, Truth Social megaphone to attack them. And indeed, Massey's position in Congress is looking extremely tenuous. Trump's funding a Republican primary bid against him next year. And so I guess, those that do dare to, defy the great leader, do so at significant personal expense. And, on the other hand, you've got people like Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, who was also, meant to be one of the sort of the stronger holdouts when the bill was passing through the Senate, only to, about face at the last minute after securing some victories for the residents of her state. So I guess he uses the carrot and the stick extremely effectively, Henry.
And given, Bevan, that polling shows that this beautiful bill is not just massive, but it's pretty unpopular. I'm just looking at the average of reputable polls. Majorities in pretty much every one disapprove of it. I'm just looking at a KFF poll. 64% of people disapprove of this bill. It could leave anything between 12 and 17 million Americans without health coverage. Why are Republicans in the House and the Senate not really that bothered about it?
Yeah, I mean, the optics aren't great, are they? On the face of it, it appears to be a sort of a reverse Robin Hood, if you like, as Hakeem Jeffries described it, with lots of giveaways for the ultra wealthy, taking money away from America's poorest. But the way that Trump has structured this is quite clever. I guess it's the Republicans in the House and Senate as well, because the tax cuts. They're the signature part of this bill, and so it's basically an extension of Trump's 2017 tax cuts, and those benefits are going to be felt almost immediately. People of all incomes will be slightly, feeling a bit happier when their paycheck lands. But the difficult parts of the bill, the taking away of Medicaid, of food stamps, that's going to be delayed for a couple of years, at least until after the midterms next year. And so I guess He's done this reasonably strategically, and that the pain will not be felt immediately, whereas the benefits, are going to kind of be landing in people's pockets. So I guess we'll have to wait and see if that bears any major ramifications for next year's midterm elections.
Yeah, and we see that the Independent Congressional Budget Office claims that this will add $3.4 trillion to the US's national debt, which is currently $36.2 trillion, and will lower tax revenues by $4.5 trillion. So what about growth and trickle down? Because I'm assuming that Trump is telling people that this will unleash the full might of the US economy. Which is why the Republicans on the House floor were shouting, USA, USA.
Yeah, it's one of those sort of happy stories that I guess Trump likes to tell himself, isn't it? That by kind of with removing tax burdens on businesses, that they'll suddenly hire more people and they'll be expanding, and this will flow down. But of course, we've seen, I think, from history that it doesn't always work out that way. And a lot of people, a lot of Republicans have been attacking those figures from the Congressional Budget Office, saying that they're a partisan outfit. I don't believe that that's the case necessarily, but I guess we will kind of learn fairly quickly whether this sort of pie in the sky hopeful thinking from Trump is going to translate to kind of to sort of economic sensible policy. It's a big question hanging over this one.
And we saw that Hakeem Jeffries, the leader of the Democrats in the House, made history with a great big long 8 hours plus speech. How strong are the Democrats right now when it comes to the plans for the midterms, mobilization, the inspiration of Zoran Mandani, who may very well, in a few months, become the next mayor of New York?
Yeah, the Democrats have been very united in their opposition to this bill. I think they'll have, a lot of ammunition to go after Republicans and attack ads and things like that. Some of the statements that have been made during the passage of the bill have been pretty unflattering, I guess, once you kind of slice and dice them and put them in a campaign ad. But yeah, it is a really interesting one, because the Democrats have really struggled to kind of unify around a common message since Trump took power. We saw a couple of months ago, Cory Booker did that 25-hour speech in the Senate to protest Trump and to those sort of Elon Musk Doge cuts. And I think they really needed something to just kind of hang around, which, Hakeem Jeffries, even though it was all a bit futile in the end, at least it gave them something to kind of unify and their opposition to Trump, and I guess that's going to be their approach going forward, that they just need to really stick together and hammer home that that message that he is out for the wealthy and not for the many. Yeah,
and Bevan, you mentioned Elon Musk, and we heard Trump yesterday saying maybe we better let Doge go after Elon, let Doge eat Elon, I think he said. Now we know Trump can threaten recalcitrant Republican senators or congressmen and women by threatening to primary them. But isn't Musk going to do the same to MAGA Republicans in the House? I mean, what chance of him setting up some new America party?
Yeah, who knows with that guy, right? He is all over the place from one day to the next, but he does seem to be very, ideologically tied to this concept of reducing the debt and not imposing this sort of enormous burden on future generations. And he's got the resources. I mean, what did he put into the Republican Party in the last cycle? Something like $280 million. So if he was to do something like that again and put it towards a third party, or even, like you say, go after some vulnerable moderate Republicans in those sort of House and Senate races, that could have a big impact. The Republicans only have, I think it's a 3 or 4 seat majority in the House. They've got there's 3 up in the Senate, but that could change pretty quickly with an injection of the type of money that Musk has to throw around.
Indeed. Bevan, that's great conversation. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Time Today. That's Bevan Hurley, senior US reporter for The Times and Sunday Times.